The harder you try to stop thinking, the more your mind keeps thinking. Why does this happen? Today, we're going to find out why your brain cannot stop thinking and what can help you break out of that cycle. Part 1. Why can't your brain stop thinking? You may think there is something wrong with your brain, but in reality, your brain is not trying to make you suffer. It is trying to protect you. One of your brain's most important jobs is to detect danger and prepare for what might happen. When you have anxiety, this system can become overactive. Your brain constantly searches for problems, constantly analyzes, and constantly tries to predict what might happen next. It does this not to bother you, but because it believes that if it thinks enough, it can help you avoid danger. That is why, even when everything is fine, your mind may continue working as if there is still a problem that has not been solved. In fact, the harder you try to force yourself to stop thinking, the more you realize those thoughts are still there. So what is actually happening inside your brain that makes your mind unable to stop? That is exactly what we are going to explore in the next part. Part 2. What is actually happening inside your brain? In psychology, this pattern of constant thinking is often called overthinking. A very common form of overthinking is called rumination, or repetitive thinking. For example, you remember a conversation from several days ago and keep asking yourself, "Why did I say that? I wish I had done something differently." You think about it again and again, but never find an answer. Another pattern is called catastrophic thinking, the tendency to always imagine the worst possible outcome. For example, you notice that your heart is beating fast and immediately think, "Am I about to have a heart attack?" Or, after having a headache for only a few days, you start worrying, "Do I have a brain tumor?" There is also something called intrusive thoughts. These are thoughts that suddenly appear even though you do not want to think about them at all. The important thing is, having a thought does not mean it is true, and it also does not mean you want it to happen. But why can a thought alone make you feel genuinely anxious? That is because your brain cannot fully distinguish between thinking about danger and actually facing danger. For example, you are simply sitting in a chair, but you keep imagining that you have a serious illness. To your brain, that is still a threat. So it may activate your stress response, making your heart beat faster, your body become more tense, and your mind become more alert. That is also why the harder you try not to think about something, the more you end up thinking about it. Because your brain has to keep checking whether that thought is still there, and that very act of checking brings the thought back even more. That is how a cycle of repetitive thinking can develop and continue day after day. Part 3. How can your brain stop repeating these thoughts? One of the most effective treatments for anxiety is CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. CBT does not try to eliminate every thought. Instead, it helps you examine whether those thoughts actually reflect reality. One very important technique is called cognitive restructuring. Simply put, it is learning to look at a thought differently instead of automatically believing it is true. For example, instead of thinking, "I definitely have a serious illness," CBT helps you ask yourself, "What evidence do I have for this? Is there another explanation that makes more sense?" To do this, therapists often use a tool called a thought record. You write down what happened, what you were thinking, how you felt, and what evidence actually supports that thought. During this process, many people realize that their minds often fall into thinking errors called cognitive distortions. For example, always expecting the worst possible outcome, or believing that just because you think something, it must be true. One of the most important things CBT helps you understand is that a thought is not the same as a fact. In psychology, this idea is often summarized with one simple sentence: thoughts are not facts. In other words, your thoughts are not reality. For example, you think, "I definitely have a serious illness." That does not mean you actually have one. As you gradually understand this, Your brain also gradually learns that not every thought reflects reality, and not every thought needs to be solved immediately. Ending. You cannot stop thinking, not because your brain is working against you, but because it is trying to protect you. However, sometimes that very protective mechanism ends up making you even more anxious. So why does your brain make so many people believe that they have a serious illness? That is what we are going to explore in the next video.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Check out my other videos to learn more useful tips about medicine and health.